We can distinguish between the different notes of the saxophone because they are at different pitches. The word pitch refers to the depth or height of a sound. If we represent this on a pitch line, with the lowest pitch being on the left and increasing in pitch as we move to the right, then the low B flat note, which is the lowest note in the saxophone, and therefore the note with the lowest pitch, would be on the left. Now if we indicate all the notes chromatically, that is each note one after the other ascending by their pitch, we would reach the highest note of the normal range of the saxophone, the high F sharp. Then all the notes after the high F sharp are the notes which form the altissimo range, the highest notes of the saxophone. All these notes would have to be recorded with a system that makes them easily identifiable. We use the same form of writing music for the saxophone as we do for the piano and many other musical instruments. We only use the letters A to G to represent these notes, and we repeat them as the pitch gets higher. So notes may have the same name but are at different pitches. For example, there is a low A, mid A, high A, altissimo A, etc. Each note is different from each other by its pitch, or how high or low the sound is. If we put the letters of the notes which are closest together on the pitch line, it will look like this. You would have noticed that some notes are closer together and some are further away. This is because there are missing notes. We haven't introduced the notes with sharps and flats. The smallest interval between two notes is called a half tone or semitone. An interval is a term used to describe the distance between two notes. So the interval between E and F is a semitone or halftone because they are right next to each other in pitch. But there are two semitones or two halftones between C and D. We refer to two semitones or two halftones as a tone. So there is an interval of a tone between C and D. Tones and semitones or halftones are important when considering the structure of scales. Now let's talk about sharps and flats. If you take a note and raise it by the smallest interval, which as you know is a semitone or halftone, then you are making the note sharp. Therefore, if you raise the note A by the smallest interval, it becomes A sharp. So we can fill in some of the spaces. A becomes A sharp. B becomes B sharp, which is also C. C becomes C sharp. D becomes D sharp. E becomes E sharp, which is also F. F becomes F sharp. And G becomes G sharp. Also, if you take a note and lower it by a semitone or halftone, then you make that note flat. Therefore, if you take the note A and lower it by a semitone or halftone, it becomes A flat. We can continue to fill in the spaces. A becomes A flat, B becomes B flat, C becomes C flat, which is also B, D becomes D flat, E becomes E flat, F becomes F flat, which is also E, and G becomes G flat. So looking at this chart, you will see that some notes have two names. For example, the note between A and B can be called A sharp or B flat. The technical term for this is enharmonic. We can also raise a note by two semitones. So if the note is already raised and you want to raise it again, we can do this by applying a double sharp, which is represented by an X. We can also lower a note by two semitones. So if the note is already lowered and you want to lower it again, we can do this by applying a double flat. If you raise or lower a note by one semitone or halftone, you can restore it back to its original condition by using a natural sign. We'll talk more about this later in the series. So let's recap. We use the letters A to G to represent notes. Each of these notes can be raised or lowered by one or two semitones or halftones. This is done by a sharp, a double sharp, a flat, or a double flat. A natural sign will cancel one sharp or flat. The term for changing a note by applying a sharp or flat is called accidentals. This will all make better sense when we see it applied in sheet music. So how do we represent these notes in sheet music? Music is written on a staff or stave, which is a set of 5 lines. At the beginning of the staff is the treble clef symbol. This symbol is also called the G clef because the tail of the symbol circles a line representing the note G. So any note in this line represents G. So this note is G because it's on the line. Now, using the lines and spaces between the lines, we can label all the notes, remembering that we only use the letters A to G and we repeat these letters. So starting from G, the next note would be A, which is represented by the space. Next comes the note B, represented by the next line, and so forth, counting lines and spaces. When we get to the top, we draw a small line called a ledger line and continue ascending. As we ascend into the altissimo range, the ledger lines can make reading the notes difficult, so the sign 8 or 8 VA is used. This basically means that the notes written must be played an octave higher. That is, play the same note which comes next higher in pitch. So if A is written, then don't play this A, but the next A higher in pitch. This system makes it easier to read, but both forms can be found in music. Now counting down from G, the next note would be F in the space, E on the line, etc. As you can appreciate, there are lots of notes to learn, but there are some things that can help you. For instance, the notes in the spaces spell face, which is easy to remember. The notes on the line E, G, B, D, F can be remembered by the sentence, "Every good boy deserves favour." Or you can make up your own sentence starting with these letters. Mid C below the staff has a ledger line through it, and C above the staff has 2 ledger lines. The rest of the notes you can work out, but it will get easier as you learn to play these notes. To change a note into a sharp or flat, just put the sign in front of the note. To finish, let's put everything that we have learnt so far in deciphering the notes of Charlie Parker's Confirmation. The first thing we see is a treble clef or G clef. Next to this is a key signature. Since there are no flats or sharps listed here, this means that the music is in the key of C. We will talk about key signatures in the next lesson. Next to the key signature is the time signature, which indicates how the beats of the music are arranged. We will talk about this in a later lesson. Music is divided into bars or measures. These notes are in the first bar or measure of the music. Bars or measures are separated from each other by bar lines or measure lines. Now let's work out the notes, which you should be able to do by now. If you haven't memorized the notes, you can count up from the G line. We know where this is because of the G clef. So, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. There are 3 notes on the F line. The sharp is an accidental, meaning it is there to change the F note to F sharp. When using an accidental, the effect applies to all the notes on that line until the end of the bar, when the effects are cancelled. So all 3 notes are F sharp. To get the second note, we can continue counting from the F line. So F, G, A. This note is A. The fourth note is on the space above the F line. So this note must be G. The last 3 notes form a triplet. Using the method of counting notes, counting up from G, we know that the first note of the triplet is on the C space and has an accidental in front of it, making it C sharp. The next note is on the line above it, so must be D. The last note is on the space above and has an accidental in front of it, making it E flat. So in reading notes, if you haven't memorized the notes, you can count up or down from G, remembering that the G clef shows us where G is. Or you can work at the notes in relation to other notes. Hello, I'm Ken Gowdy. Hope you understood everything in this tutorial. In the next tutorial in this series, we will look at key signatures. We will look at the construction of the major scales and the natural minor scales and how they relate to the key signatures. Thanks for watching.